The prairie was dying, all along the endless trail west. The grass had withered to brittle strands, and the wind carried the taste of ash. The sky was heavy with dust, painted in long smears of rust and gray, as if even the sun was too tired to shine. A wagon creaked slowly across that emptiness, old wood groaning with every bump, wheels wobbling from too many miles over torn earth. The mule pulling it looked half dead. So did the man walking beside it. He had a face carved by wind and time, a rifle slung across his back, a faded coat, sun-worn and frayed. His eyes were pale, unreadable, but his movements told you everything, cautious, slow, always scanning the horizon. Not because he expected mercy, but because he expected men. In the back of the wagon, beneath a patchwork of stitched canvas and threadbare blankets, a little girl lay curled like a question mark, small, thin, sleeping with one arm wrapped around a stuffed rabbit that had lost its ears. She moaned in her sleep, her lips cracked and pink from fever. The man, Cal Rourke, looked back at her, pausing in his steps, a long breath. Then he pressed onward. The trail cut through a canyon of scorched cottonwoods, their bark blackened, branches reaching upward like broken hands. He hadn't seen another soul in 2 days. Just vultures and wagon ruts that led nowhere. But then, just past the rocks, he saw her. At first, she was nothing but a blur against the earth, still, hunched and covered in soot. Her hair hung in dark strands across her face, and her clothes were torn at the sleeves. She sat at the edge of the trail, one leg stretched out, the other tucked under her like it hurt. He stopped the mule. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The girl didn't wave. She didn't cry for help. She didn't speak. She just watched him. He stepped down slowly, boots crunching against gravel. His hand hovered near the holster at his hip. You hurt? He asked. No reply. The girl looked 19, maybe younger. Her face was smeared with dust, her jaw bruised, and a thin cut trailed from her temple into her hairline. Her hands were folded in her lap, clenched around something white and folded. She didn't look afraid, just alert. Cal glanced back at his daughter, then back at the girl. It's 3 days' ride to anything worth calling shelter, he said. 2 without water. Still, she didn't speak, but her shoulders sank slightly. Her lips parted, and he saw it then, not defiance, not stubbornness, but exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion you don't fake. He gestured toward the wagon. Climb in, you can ride. The girl hesitated, then stood slowly, stiffly. She didn't limp, but she favored her left side. Whatever had happened to her, it hadn't been gentle. She climbed into the wagon without a word, sat across from the sleeping child, pulled the canvas back over her knees. Cal watched her for a moment longer, then returned to the reins, clicking. His tongue, the mule obeyed, and the wagon creaked forward again. They didn't speak for the next hour. The sun dipped lower, bleeding into the hills. Coyotes cried in the far distance. The wind picked up, blowing dust in thin spirals across the trail. Once. Cal glanced back and caught the girl looking at him, not like a passenger, like a watcher, and in her lap. Half hidden by her coat, he saw it again, the corner of that folded paper gripped so tightly the edges had begun to tear. That night they made camp in the half-collapsed shell of an old barn, its walls twisted from fire long ago, roof open to the stars like a wound that never healed. Cal didn't speak as he unpacked the rations. The mule had gone lame an hour before sundown, so he'd walked the last mile carrying Ava in his arms. She was sleeping now, curled beneath a thin blanket in the wagon, her breath shallow but steady. The girl, Jess, as she finally called herself when asked, sat near the crumbling door, legs crossed, staring out into the emptiness. Her hands rested in her lap, that folded paper still pressed between her palms like a rosary. She hadn't spoken more than 10 words since she climbed into the wagon. But Cal had spent enough time around silence to know when it was hiding something. He offered her a piece of dried venison. She took it without thanks, chewed slowly, stared past the fields, to the dark ridgelines where shapes sometimes moved but never showed their faces. Asterisk. You're not from around here, Cal said finally. Asterisk Jess. Didn't respond. Asterisk a plank creaked. Somewhere above them, a bird fluttered its wings and took off into the night. Cal lit a small fire, low, controlled, just enough to warm a tin of water. He watched the steam rise like ghosts from the embers. Asterisk. I don't ask many questions, he said, voice flat. I've got one job, keep her alive. Asterisk Jess's eyes shifted toward the wagon. Her gaze softened, just a flicker. What's her name? Asterisk. Ava. Asterisk Jess nodded slowly, like she was memorizing it. She yours? Asterisk Cal stirred the tin absently. She's the only thing left, that is. Silence returned, thick and humming. Then Jess said, she offered me her rabbit, first thing she did. Asterisk Cal didn't answer, but he turned his head slightly. Jess continued, quieter. Asterisk, kids don't do that unless they think you're safe. Asterisk, her voice cracked on the word safe, like it had rusted in her throat. Asterisk, the wind picked up again, whistling through the broken slats. In the distance, thunder rolled, too far to worry about, but close enough to taste in the air. Jess pulled her coat tighter. Asterisk later, when the fire was dying, and Ava had begun to cough in her sleep, Cal rose quietly and walked outside. Asterisk, he followed. The edge of the field to a creek barely deeper than his boots. Kneeling, he splashed his face, then cupped water for Ava's canteen. Asterisk, when he returned. Jess was gone, the folded note was gone too. Cal didn't panic. He just stood there, staring at the empty spot where she'd been. Asterisk, then he heard it, the crack of underbrush. Soft but deliberate. Asterisk, he turned toward the barn's far edge and moved silently. Drawing the knife from his belt. Asterisk, he found her crouched behind the old feed barrels, coat half unbuttoned, inspecting a gash on her side. The folded paper lay open on the ground beside her. Asterisk Cal saw it in the flicker of moonlight. Asterisk. Not a letter, not a map, a file, stamped with faded ink, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Asterisk, he stepped forward. You want to tell me why a starving girl's carrying a federal file with my name on it? Asterisk Jess didn't move. Her breathing was shallow, strained. She didn't reach for the paper. Didn't try to run. Asterisk. Because I was sent, she said simply. I was supposed to find you. Asterisk Cal took another step, hand tightening around the knife. Handle. Asterisk why? Jess met his eyes, then truly met them. To see if the stories were true? Asterisk, he stared. What stories? Asterisk, that you killed a federal agent in Nebraska and disappeared with your daughter. That you were armed. Dangerous. Ex-military. Trained to vanish. His grip on the knife faltered. Jess's voice dropped. They said you were a threat. That you were dragging a little girl across the deadlands, maybe not even yours. They gave me that file. Sent me in quiet to confirm, to watch. Asterisk and... If you confirmed? Asterisk Jess didn't answer. She didn't need to. Cal stepped back like the barn itself had struck him. How long have you been following us? He asked. Asterisk. Since the river, she said. I watched you bury your mule. Asterisk. He closed his eyes, a long breath. The kind of breath that tastes like regret. Asterisk Jess moved to stand, wincing from her side wound. She didn't go for a weapon. She didn't raise her voice. Asterisk. I thought I knew what I'd find, she said. A dangerous man, a fugitive. But she looked toward the sleeping child. She sings in her sleep. Asterisk Cal's voice came low, ragged. What happens now? Asterisk Jess looked up at the sky. The thunder was closer now. Stormlight flickered on the far hills. Asterisk. They'll send someone else soon, real agents, not watchers. Asterisk Cal stared at her. Asterisk. And what are you? Jess paused, then, a mistake. Asterisk. The wind tore through the barn again. The fire had gone out. But Cal didn't feel cold, not anymore. He just looked at her, this girl with ash on her skin and a badge in her coat, and something unspoken passed between them. Asterisk, not trust. Not yet, but a beginning. Dawn rose red. Asterisk, not soft like a prayer, but angry, bleeding light across the plains in long, jagged strokes. The sky looked torn open, and the silence that came with it wasn't peace. It was warning. Cal stood alone at the edge of the field, boots wet with dew, rifle cradled in his arms like an old habit he wished he could forget. He had been awake for hours, hadn't slept, couldn't. Asterisk behind him, the barn slept too, hollow and splintered, its walls still warm from the fire they'd rebuilt. Ava was curled beneath the last of the wool, her breath soft and steady. Jess slept sitting up, her back against the far wall, coat draped over her knees, fingers twitching in half-dreams. Asterisk. Cal couldn't stop hearing her voice from the night before. Asterisk. They'll send someone else. Asterisk. Not lawmen, not marshals, but people who wore suits and silence like armor, people who didn't ask, people who made things disappear. Asterisk. He had tried to run once, had spent months slipping across back roads, changing names, burning letters, but running didn't protect the girl in the wagon. It only taught her to be afraid of every door. Asterisk. He looked down at his boots. Asterisk. A trail of dust was rising in the distance. Horses, they were coming. Asterisk. Cal didn't call out, didn't rush inside. He just watched the dust rise higher, faster. 6 riders, maybe more. They moved like wolves. No banners, no noise. He turned back toward the barn. Inside, Jess was already awake, fingers tightening the strap of her shoulder holster. Her wound was still raw. She winced when she stood, but she stood. Her eyes met his. "They're early," she said. Cal nodded. Asterisk. Jess walked over and looked out past him. "They'll try to draw you out? Make it clean? Quick?" Asterisk. They know about her? He gestured toward Ava. Jess didn't answer. She didn't have to. Asterisk. Cal stepped back, took one long look at his daughter, at the rabbit she still clutched in her sleep. Asterisk. Then he said, "Get her out." Asterisk. Jess blinked. "What?" Asterisk. "Take the girl and go. There's a ridge east. The trail forks behind the rocks. You'll stay hidden if you keep low." "I can't." "You can," Cal said, firm now. "You know these men. You know how they move." Asterisk. "And what about you?" He turned toward the open field. "I'll buy time." Asterisk. Jess stepped forward, furious and pale. "They're not bounty hunters, Cal. They won't talk. You give yourself up, they erase you. There is no trial." He looked at her then, and his voice dropped to something hollow and final. "I've run enough." Jess's jaw clenched. Then she moved, fast. She scooped up Ava, still sleeping, and packed what little she could. Cal handed her the canteen. The girl stirred, whimpered, "Daddy?" But Jess hushed her, whispering low and soft as she carried her toward the back exit. Asterisk. Just before vanishing behind the barn, Jess turned back one last time. Asterisk. "Why me?" she asked. "You knew I was watching you." Asterisk. Cal didn't look at her. Asterisk. "Because you stayed." Then she was gone, and the riders arrived. Asterisk. They didn't shout, didn't raise weapons. Asterisk. They circled the field, slow, professional, 6 men in matching coats. One dismounted and walked forward, hands visible, calm and clean. Asterisk. "Mr. Rourke," he said, voice smooth as oil, "you've been a hard man to find." Asterisk. Cal said nothing. Asterisk. "You have something that doesn't belong to you," the man continued. "A child, a name, a second chance. It ends now." Asterisk. Cal stepped forward. The rifle hung loosely in his hands, barrel down. Asterisk. "She's mine," he said. The man smiled. "We can make this easy." Cal raised the rifle and fired. Chaos. Asterisk. The first shot struck the dirt beside the man's boot, a warning. The others drew weapons, but Cal was already moving, ducking behind the trough, firing again. Wood splintered, dust flew. A horse screamed. He counted 3 shots, then ducked. They fired back, short, controlled bursts, trained fire. One grazed his shoulder, tore through cloth and skin. He grunted, pressed his back to the beam. Asterisk. He knew he couldn't hold them. Not long, but time was never the point. Somewhere far behind the ridge, a child was breathing. That was the point. Another shot tore through the wall beside his head. He rolled, came up shooting. One rider fell, leg hit. Another cursed, ducked for cover. Then the barn began to burn. A stray shot hit the old lantern still hanging above. Flames rushed across the dry wood like it had been waiting for years. Smoke poured from the rafters. The barn screamed as its bones caught fire. Cal stumbled outside, coughing. They surrounded him, guns raised. The lead man stepped forward again, face smudged now, but unshaken. Cal dropped the rifle. His chest heaved. Blood ran down his arm. But his eyes were steady. She's not part of this. He said. The man didn't reply. Instead, he raised his weapon. A shot cracked. But not his. One of the riders fell sideways. Head snapped back. Dead before he hit the ground. Another shot, from the hills. And suddenly the riders turned, looking wildly toward the RIDGEL, and Jess stood on the rocks above, legs braced, one arm holding the girl, the other steady on the long-range rifle she'd pulled from the wagon floor. Her face was pale. Her aim was steady. The next bullet struck the man's shoulder. Screaming, scrambling, horses bucking, Cal snatched the fallen pistol and dove behind a tree. By the time the dust cleared, 2 men were dead. The others gone, scattered into the hills, too shaken to finish the job. Jess was gone again too, but Cal knew where they'd be waiting. The sun was high when he reached the old ranger tower, miles deep into the mountain trail. Ava sat wrapped in blankets by the fire. Jess sat beside her, pale and silent. They looked up as Cal stepped inside. Ava ran to him. He dropped to his knees, held her close. Jess looked away, quietly wiping blood from her mouth. Did they follow? She asked. No, Cal said. They'll report a failure. Say it was too late. Then they'll bury the file. Jess nodded. It buys time. Cal looked at her. That's all we ever had. She didn't answer. Outside, a crow passed overhead, silent, black against the sky. Inside, the fire crackled low and steady. They didn't speak for a long time, but they didn't leave either. And that was something.